Hello, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mike Brown. I work with Sue and John on the technical development of data labs and the digital asset registry for PLUS, and then I work with John and Sue as well on the service bundle portfolio in the PPP. So I'm only here to introduce this session, and I'm sorry that you've already seen this a number of times, but I just wanted to throw the system overview up again, and what's circled in red is what we're going to cover for this last session, I believe. And also to pick out a few points about what these particular components of the IT infrastructure are for. So you've been introduced to the digital asset registry, and I presume a lot of you already know about DIMES, and I just wanted to differentiate between the two, that we're concentrating DIMES, as you know, on site catalogues, or site descriptions, I should say. So basically it's a catalogue of sites, what they do, where they are, etc. And we've wanted to separate out the digital assets that are collected by the site into this digital asset registry. We're not calling it just a data set catalogue, because it can collect more or it can describe more than data sets. It can also describe things like models and workflows, and hopefully in the end services as well. So we wanted to differentiate the fact that DIMES is about sites and digital asset registry is about what those sites are capturing, how to describe them in the catalogue. And then finally, we're going to move on to data labs, as Sue's pointed out, this collaborative analytical framework that you can use to explore and analyze the data that has been collected. So I'm going to pass over now to Phil, who is going to walk you through how the digital asset registry is used to capture and then publish the metadata around the digital asset. Thank you. Over to you, Phil.
Hi, everybody. Can you see my screen first before I start?
Yeah, we can. We can see your
Great,
screen.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Phil. I also work with Sue, Mike, John, and a couple of the others who are going to be on the call later. I work at UKCH and mostly on the Environmental Information Data Centre, which is the UK's data repository for ecology, terrestrial ecology and hydrology data sets. So the reason I've been asked to demo today the digital asset register is we use a very similar registry to catalogue our data sets and services. So what you see on your screen at the moment is the eLTER digital asset register as it currently stands. Now, as you can see, there's not much in it at the moment. So I'm going to switch over to look at the EIDC catalogue, which, like I say, is very similar, but is populated with a lot of data sets. So you should be able to see how it works in practice a lot easier. So if I just switch over. So you can probably see this very similar layout to what you've already seen before. Basically, when you come to our data catalogue or asset register, we've got basically a list of all the data sets that we've catalogued here on the right hand side. And this is a search interface. So I can search in a number of ways. I can type keywords at the top. I can use these facets on the left hand side to narrow my search. So for example, if I'm looking for only agricultural data, I click on the agriculture tab there. There are a number of these facets which you can define yourself. So we use these facets such as general scientific topic, who the rights holder of the data is, the availability of the data set, but you, in your eLTER assets register, you would define your own filters. For example, you could have a filter for sites. So if you have a DIMES site listed in that left-hand side, you can click on it and see the data sets that are generated from that site. There's also a map search. So if I click onto that, I can search using a map by, for example, drawing a bounding box. If I was interested in data in Spain, I could draw a bounding box around Spain, and it would show me on the right-hand side data that was generated in that area. I'll just go back. So most people would come to this and use the keyword search. So for example, if I'm looking for soil, just start typing in the keyword search and the record list underneath will automatically update to show me records that match my search, so soil. So if I'm looking for soil in Scotland, for example, adding keywords, and it will just show me data sets for soil in Scotland. So what's the purpose of this? Well, basically, it's for customers to come along and find data that they're interested in. And once they've found the data using this search, they can evaluate whether the data is of use to them. And the way to do that is by clicking on these records, and that will give you more information. So it'll give you the detailed metadata for these records. So for example, if I'm looking for, let's have a look, sulfur deposition data. You can see there's 81 records in our catalogue that match those terms. So say I'm looking for this sulfur nitrogen deposition data for the UK, 2011 to 13. I click on that record, it'll show me the details. So the details are basically what you would expect from a metadata record. There's a title which describes what you're looking at. There's a more detailed description to enable you to figure out a bit more about the data. There's also things like a map to show you where the data was generated, a provenance and quality statement, say what quality measures were put in place when generating the data and where the data originated from in the first place. There's also lots of other metadata elements we can record, like things where this data set has been cited, for example. I can list all the publications in which it's been cited. Who to contact for more information, so the person who's generated the data in the majority of cases, the authors of the data set, so the collaborators basically, who may have gone out and collected the data from the field, or who may have done some post-processing in the labs or quality assurance checking. Additional metadata such as keywords and other things as well. As a customer, I can also come along, once I've decided I'm interested in this data, I can actually download the data as well. I'm not going to do that now, but I click on that link and it would basically download the files that would allow me to see that. So in addition to data sets, we can also record the metadata of services. So for example, if there's a web map service that is related to this data set, I can also see that, and I can see in this case there is one. So if I come down to related, I can see services associated with this data set, and there is one. So I click on it, it will take me to a record for that web map service, and I can preview it by opening it in a map viewer. So if I just turn that on, you can see the data there. I could also use that web map service in my own applications by copying that URL and pasting it into a GIS system, for example. We also, if I go back to the main search page, we also record data collections as well. So if I, for example, search for the environmental change network, I can see this first record is a data collection rather than a data set. Basically, all that is a metadata record that is collecting together assets that are maybe linked together. So in this case, all the data sets generated by the UK ECN have their own data set record, but there's this sort of umbrella record collecting those together, so I can see them all listed, and then I can access each of these in turn. So how does this metadata get into the register? If I switch back to the eLTER version of this, so the Digital Assets Register, I can show you, basically, you would fill in this information using a web form from this interface. So if you've got the permissions, you will have this create button at the top, and you can just use it to create a new metadata record. So I can click create, a data set record, and basically you're given this form to fill in. It's very simple. There's no tricks. It's all really simple, plain text or drop-down options. So, for example, I would give it a title. So I'm going to attempt to do this live. If it goes wrong, apologize. So I'm just cutting and pasting this. So I give it a title. I can give it a description. I have to say what type of data it is. So is it a data set? Is it a collection? Is it a web service, for example? And there's lots and lots of other options. If any of you are familiar with the ISO standard for spatial metadata, this has been derived from those standards, basically. So a lot of these elements, such as resource type, where you've got these lists of types of resource you can define, come from that metadata standard. So this catalog is based on those metadata standards, and also we use things like schema.org, DataCite, and other standards to generate this metadata. So I'll keep on filling it in. So we've got a tabbed interface at the top because there are a lot of metadata fields. They're not all mandatory, but you can fill as much or as little as you need. But because there's a lot of fields, we've got a tabbed interface at the top to sort of gather them together in groups. So if I wanted to, for example, say who the contact for this data set is, I can add a contact here and fill in the details, the person's name, the organization, ORCID, and I can fill in the address if I need to, the email address, for example, and select a role on the contact. And I can add multiple contacts. So if I wanted to add another one, say if the data set had 10 authors, I could add 10 contacts here, which I'm not going to do now. Actually, there's a classification tab where you can add keywords. So I just click add it one quick simply. You can add either free text or you can add URIs to controlled vocabulary terms. We have actually recently updated this. So we've got a new interface which is actually searching catalog terms in controlled vocabularies. Specifically for eLTER, that would be the eMTHES vocabulary. So basically you'd have this form, you start typing, I can't show you this slide unfortunately, start typing say nitrogen, and it would show you a list of all of the terms from eMTHES which match your search, and you'd be able to pick from them. So rather than typing them out manually, you'd be able to pick. I won't fill it all in, but if I go to spatial, I can, for example, say where this data come from. So I think this was Austria, and they would give me a map bounding box around Austria to do that. I'm not going to fill in the rest of the information. I'll just save that and exit it. Oops, I knew that would work. This is a live demo. But anyway, you get the picture. It's basically a form fill in. But one thing I haven't shown you is how this links to DIMES. So yeah, I need to move things around my screen. So let me do that again. Okay, so we've got this DIMES site link element here, and basically you click the add button and you should be able to start typing the name of a site, so any other site across Europe that is defined in DIMES, and it will search DIMES for that site and link to it. So if I start searching, it'll show me a list of sites that match my text at the top, and I can click on it and it will add a link. I can add multiple sites. So if I start typing again, let's just type a couple of characters. You can see as I start typing, it narrows that search. And then I can click on whatever site I want to link to. Let's do that again. I know this metadata doesn't make any sense, Morehouse and Austrian data, but never mind. So if I save it, let's see if this works this time. Yeah, it's worked. Okay, so if I come out of that, I can see the HTML view of that data set that I've defined. And obviously I haven't filled in the entire record, so in a completed record, you see more than this. But those sites I've defined there now link to that DIMES catalog. So if I clicked on it, it would take to the DIMES site where I could see more about those platforms and sites. I go back to the search. As I mentioned earlier, in this filters panel on the left-hand side, for the digital assets register, there is just one filter defined at the moment, but you can add more, and the filter you defined is sites. So you can search for all data that's coming from this particular site or that particular site, click on it, and it will narrow down the data sets on the right-hand side based on that filter that I've chosen. So that's a whistle-stop tour. I'll pause there and pass back to Mike. But before I do that, just one more thing. We also, in the EIDC, we also use this catalog for customers to be able to upload their data. So as well as defining their data as a metadata record, you can actually attach files to those metadata records. So customers come along, they click on an upload button, and they can basically upload their CSV files or NetCDF files or whatever data they might have. And that's how we make the data available. So Mike, have I missed anything there?
I don't think so. I'm just checking with Sue as well. Thanks, Phil. That was great. Whether we're taking questions now or we're leaving it till the end of the session, Sue?
I've been keeping an eye on the chat and I don't see anything that we need to address straight away.
Okay.
But thanks, Phil. You're a lot braver than I am. Well done. And thanks, Mike.
We do have a quick question about a DOI. Do the data get a DOI when you upload them there? The answer is yes. I'm going to move on now then to Cristoph, who's going to take you on another whistle-stop tour. I can get that out of DIMES. So if you want to stop sharing that, Phil, then we can move on to Cristoph. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. I hope you can see my screen. I'm going to focus. I'm not going to give you an introduction of who I am. Hopefully, you should know that. DIMES is more important than I am anyway. I'm just merely transporting what's to be known about DIMES. So we had a few updates on DIMES. Some of you might have noticed that. Hopefully, all of you should actually have received an email about that. So hopefully, I'm not telling you any news. We changed the site forms. I don't expect anyone to know the site form by heart and genuinely realize the changes in between, but we have added a few new fields describing the landforms, the protection level of the site, and something that we at the moment call observations of high relevance. I've put in parentheses that it's a beta version with an exclamation mark to genuinely indicate that it's not the final version. So if you notice anything about that that's off and it's not working for you, then please use the DIMES contact form or drop me an email right away so we can address that. If you fill in the site form and you provide information about the observations of high relevance, it will present something to you like the chart on the right-hand side. That's something only you can see when you're logged in for your own site. It's not something that's publicly available at the moment. I can also see that as an administrator, but it's not shared with the public at the moment. In addition to that, we have revised a few fields: the site status, the site type, and the land use, which was called resource management before that. Mostly we use standardized code lists now for things that didn't have standardized code lists before. We have also added a big new functionality. It's called locations. We had the issue that some sites were struggling a bit to describe the geographic extent of the sites because depending on the on the structure, the setup of the site, and also the research question, the geographic extent of the site varied a bit. So if you had a site and it was doing hydrological measurements, obviously you have the sampling point somewhere in the river, for instance. But you could also have the hydrological catchment area, and depending on the question and the research question, obviously it changed a bit. Sometimes the extent was bigger and sometimes it was smaller. And that led to people providing vastly different site boundaries that were sometimes very small when they only described like the genuine infrastructure, the measurement infrastructure, and sometimes it was extraordinarily big when they provided the hydrological catchment area, especially when the catchment area is very big. And in order to bring more structure into chaos, we added this functionality to hopefully make it clearer how a site is constructed spatially, so to say. An example for that is on the right-hand side. If you provide the hydrological catchment area, it will be displayed like this in the sitemap, where you have a blue line that's dashed. That's indicating a hydrological catchment inside this particular site. The orange one is the project area itself. What we've also done is that we've hopefully improved the search functionality. We've certainly added a bit to it. If you go to the menu under Explore Advanced Search eLTER sites, you will have, or just follow this link right here, you will have a more sophisticated search interface with more facets that will allow you to search, in particular, eLTER sites using the aforementioned new fields. I have a small remark regarding site documentation in general. Some of the records, that's actually very polite, lots of the records don't have descriptive texts for the photos. An example is here. If you're the site manager of this site, don't feel bad that I picked your site. I could have picked from a wide selection of sites, actually. The issue is that there are a lot of sites where the text is not defined. This is something that I actually added, I think 2 years ago, because we had to move our system to a new version, and we require descriptive text. So that's mandatory for photos, images, to increase accessibility, especially for visually impaired people. Lots of the images didn't have any text whatsoever. So by default, I put not defined in every occasion when there was just nothing. I was naive and assumed that people would over time update this. But especially the last few weeks have demonstrated to me that this is not the case. Even if people update the site records, they generally don't update this not defined. So please, when you go to your site, provide some sort of descriptive text. So imagine you're a visually impaired person and you're having a hard time understanding the image, put something there that's making it clear. In this case, it would be something like project area of sites, something in the summertime aerial photo. Something like this is absolutely sufficient. You don't have to provide huge texts, but just something that makes it clear what the image is about. Why should you do this? Because we actually use your data. We don't collect data for the sake of collecting data. I'm sure we've all had that in some previous projects where people would send out questionnaires and you spend a lot of time filling them in, and then in the end they're used for nothing, or maybe for one little survey for some particular project and then never used again. This is not the case for DIMES. We actually use this data. I've pasted an example right here. It's a study that I actually offered with a few colleagues of mine. This one was using all the information that we had available about eLTER sites. So if you're in this call and you have sites described to DIMES, your information was used for the study as well. This study had issues. It had problems with flawed data. We spent lots of time correcting that. This is something I didn't like, didn't enjoy. That wasn't necessarily quite honestly. I want you to be aware of the fact that every mistake and every small issue that you have in one of your site records, it will be duplicated because people use DIMES for studies, not just us, not just the eLTER people, but our data is publicly available. And it happens on a regular basis that people take data from DIMES and they do some sort of analysis with it. So if you have incorrect information about your site, that will spread out throughout the world and it will be in studies. Now, obviously, you can't always prevent every single mistake, but there are some bigger flaws in there that we don't want to have. Right, and now I can either do a live demo of the new functionality, or we can do a Q&A session, depending on what Sue says or Mike says, or the questions in the chat box. I am your humble servant.
Over to you, Sue. What do you say?
I mean, there was one comment in the chat about not seeing much about surface waters, but I think you would, I'm not sure that that's particularly a question for you. And you did show about how we can show catchments on DIMES. So maybe you could pick that up in the live demo.
Sure. So this is DIMES. Hopefully you know that already. If you go to any site, and we're going to take everybody's favorite site of today, the Attribution. The Attribution has already used this feature of adding locations rather extensively. So first of all, here's a photo, and here's a nice descriptive text, by the way. Oops, that just moves away. Automatic chamber for solid carbon respiration, something like this when you describe images, by the way. You still describe here the primary boundary, sorry, the primary boundary of a site. However, you can add related locations to that. In the case of the Attribution, that would be, for instance, intensive plots. So you can click on one of those, and it will show something that is inside the project area of the Attribution, which would be something here. And this grabs a very particular point inside the site where very particular measurements like this one are carried out. It's very simple. If you want to do that, you just go to add new content, then you can select location, and then you can just type in something, once it's loaded, something, whatever, description. And then here, similar to the interface you've seen shown by Philip Trembath, you can select site. And then you just add the boundaries here. Something like this. And then you just hit save, which I'm not going to do because I don't want to have that on the production version of DIMES. And then it's already on DIMES. And then will be automatically linked and available. Okay, if there aren't any other questions, I can also show you how that looks on the map. Because it's a very new feature, so we haven't fully implemented it in every map interface that we have yet. But it would, for instance, look something like this. So again, another Austrian site, Rosaria. So as you can see, that was the screenshot that I used. So this is the project area. This is the hydrological catchment in this case. You can also go to the site record itself and see they actually have a few related locations here as well. In this case, it's the hydrological catchment. Something that I maybe should have mentioned is that you can also classify the type of location. So there's something in the form that says location type, and it's a drop-down list, and then you can say, oh, this is hydrological catchment, or this is an airshed, or this is something, something, something. If
That's
anyone
great.
from Rosalia is here, it's a very great example, actually. Very nicely described, great pictures. Looks great. Also linked data sets. What else can I ask for?